Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today is going to be the start of another weekly reading vlog. It is Sunday, May 8th. However, I'm kind of doing a belated Spring Fling-A-Ween-a-thon because it was originally supposed to happen at the tail end of April, and just the week that it was happening was just very, very bad for my mental health, just both like personally and then just the United States is just a nightmare right now. So I had like a very hard time concentrating on anything. So we're gonna do like a take two. We're gonna try it again this week. Just, you know, a very unofficial, informal kind of Spring Fling-A-Ween for me. Instead of the weekend that it was originally supposed to be, I'll probably just kind of focus on a lot of horror this week because I have so many new release books that I want to check out that are all kind of horror or spooky speculative fiction. So definitely I think I'll try and like focus a little bit on those prompts to focus my reading, especially because I don't think last week I read more than maybe 100 pages total for the entire week, and that was audiobook and physically. I really don't think I hit 100 pages. It was just not a good reading week, but I am feeling a little bit better. I have read today, and honestly what I've read today was probably more than all of last week combined. So yes, definitely. Also, I'm not saying that's like not a lot of pages. If you normally read like 100 pages a week, that's awesome. I don't think that's a small amount if that's what you normally read, just with my reading trends. That was just not high for me. Definitely something where I could like very much track and see, oh, I cannot focus on anything to save my life. So we're gonna try it again this week, see how that goes. Spring Fling-A-Ween. It's hosted by Olivia from Olivia Reads a Latte, and then also Gabby from Gabby Reads. It was a shorter readathon. It was just the 27th through the 30th, and the prompts were read a book with pink or yellow on the cover and read a backlist thriller or horror, as well as try and make like a fall themed drink or baked good, something like that. So the book that I am currently reading and I am making pretty good progress through would be Sundial by Catriona, and this is the one with pink on the cover that I'll be using. I'm on page 114 of this one out of 290, so kind of halfway-ish through this one. This one definitely is really helping me get out of my reading slump. It's very, very fast-paced and readable. I would say it's horror, but also like thriller in terms of the pacing. It's very fast-paced. I feel like the chapters are shorter and kind of leave off on like cliffhangers or leave off with you finding out some explosive new information that makes you want to keep reading, and the chapters are very short as well. So I am enjoying this. I am enjoying it a whole lot more than the author's last book that I read. Last House on Needless Street was kind of a miss for me, but I did mention when I had finished it the things that I didn't like about it. I definitely felt like they were book and plot specific, so I felt like I wanted to check out something else by the author because I thought the writing style was very good. So I'm definitely feeling that here, connecting with the horror. I'm not connecting with the horror. I don't really relate to the main characters in here like at all, but I am really enjoying the horror aspects and the horror story of this a whole lot more. So enjoying that. For the backlist horror, I do plan on picking up The Family Plot by Cherie. This one came out in 2016, so I definitely call that, I would say, at least backlist horror. It's been out for quite a number of years now, and I've heard really good things about Cherie, and I haven't actually read anything by that author. So looking forward to checking this out. I believe this is a gothic haunted house story, modern haunted house story. It looks like it's going to be, as the title suggests, like kind of a family saga in a haunted house story, which I really, really like. So looking forward to hopefully picking this up sometime this week after I finish Sundial. So these are my unofficial TBR for my makeup Spring Fling-A-Ween-a-thon. And then also I picked this book up the other day, and I am going to try and keep reading this one and maybe finish it this week. That is going to be The Book of Night by Holly Black. This one is not necessarily horror. It's a dark fantasy, and I really am going into this one pretty much blind, so I don't know too much about it, and I'm only on about about page 20, so still getting introduced to the world. I will say I think it's almost like it is an urban fantasy. I think it's set in our world in like the very, very close future. So something happens in our world, I think, and then the magical aspects and the magic system get put into our world. But other than that, it's pretty much urban fantasy, our world, with those magical, creepy elements placed in there. It's a fairly short standalone fantasy with like a dark fantasy vibe, and I loved the Spiderwick Chronicles as a kid, which is the only other thing that I've read by Holly Black. So this is her adult debut, and I was really interested in checking it out, so I'll be reading this as well. So those are my reading plans. The big question of the hour is if I'll actually stick to that TBR or not. I'm a mood reader at the best of times, and especially like right now where it's like I am just coming out of a reading slump pretty much. I mean, before last week I was already kind of getting into a reading slump, and then I was just very slumpy. So April kind of, it started as a really good reading month and then it didn't end so great. So I'm hoping that May can be a little bit better for me in terms of reading. So honestly, you know, if any of these aren't working for me, I'm going to be very ruthless about DNFing, and I'm going to be very much trying to go with my own reading flow and making sure if something's not engaging me or if I don't feel like I'm in the right mood for a book, not to be afraid to pick something else like completely different up. Because at least for me, I have two different kinds of reading slumps, and one I wouldn't even call it so much of like a reading slump. But anyway, two kinds. I feel like the first kind is where reading, even though it's something that I love, just some periods of time I just am not really interested in reading, and I'm not like wanting to read, and that's okay. So like I don't normally read when I'm in that kind of reading slump. I'll have like periods where definitely, usually reading is like one of my top things that I like to do in terms of hobby, escapism, what I like to do in my free time. However, sometimes I just won't be feeling it, and I'll have phases where I will just be more into gaming or watching movies, watching TV, things like that, and doing other things rather than reading, and not really wanting to read. And so having those kinds of slumps I think is perfectly normal. I don't think it's like very realistic to be the same amount of involved and interested in the same things all of the time. And then the second kind of reading slump, which is the kind that I've been in for the past, I would say almost 2 weeks now at this point, is the one where there are a bunch of good books that have come out that I want to read. I'm in the reading mood. I really want to sit down and read. I've been craving reading a book, and every time I sit down and do it, I don't have the attention span. I don't have the attention span to read physically or on audio. It's just not clicking for me, and that is like the most frustrating kind of reading slump, is the ones where I want to read. It's not that I'm not interested in reading, but every time I sit down, it's just not clicking. So yes, I'm trying to get out of that kind of reading slump. I definitely also want to be careful about if I'm not in the mood to read a specific book, not pushing through it, because a lot of the books that I want to pick up and a lot of the books that I have currently, whether it's new releases that I have purchased or new releases that I've obtained through the library, I don't want to read an anticipated release and not like it, because I was in a reading slump and like pushed my way through it and read it in the wrong mindset. So yeah, definitely going to be a very interesting reading balance for me, but that's pretty much the beginning of this reading vlog. I wanted to make sure that I filmed an introduction to this reading vlog when I was like feeling in a reading mood, to kind of set up the week, to make sure I at least try and pick up some books, try and start reading again this week. But that's really all I have for this introduction. I'm going to go ahead and get reading. I will talk to you all in the next clip. little reading update for you guys. I did finish Sundial by Catriona. I did already return the copy that I was reading to the library, but I did really enjoy this. I enjoyed it a whole lot more than The Last House on Needless Street. I read that, I believe, in January of this year, right at the very beginning of this year, and I did say that it wasn't the story for me. I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't enjoy the twists or the tropes used in that one, but I did enjoy the writing style, so I said that I would definitely pick up something else by the author. I was very intrigued by this one. The cover called to me, as well as the synopsis sounded like a little bit more up my alley, so I did finish it. It's a very fast-paced thriller, and definitely trigger warnings in this one for animal experimentation, as well as quite a fair bit of medical horror, and then abuse as well. Just pretty much any kind of abuse, unfortunately, was like a big theme in here, especially like familial abuse and the different relationships that people can have with each other within a family and how those can be impacted by different kinds of abuse. So keep that in mind before going into this one. I feel like Catriona is one of those authors where you want to go in pretty blind to like the plot and what's going to happen, because they take you on a very interesting and very dark direction, and sometimes I think perhaps where you're going is not where you would expect if you read all of The Dust Jacket. But I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it more than The Last House on Needless Street, I will say. I think from the reviews, I think if you really loved that one, this one might be more of a miss for you, whereas maybe if you didn't get the hype or were a little bit disappointed in Last House on Needless Street, you might like this one a little bit better. But I did finish that. And then the other book that I've been making my way through this week is A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth, and this one is a reread for me. This is one of my favorite books of 2020. The sequel is coming out later this month, so I wanted to get a refresher. This is quite a thick urban fantasy, and I did read it at the beginning of 2020, so I really do enjoy, if I can, have the opportunity to reread books in a series before going on to the next one, especially if it's a series where I've only read the first book, because I just feel like if it's like a 7-book series or something like that and I've read 4 or 5 books in it, I don't need to do a reread, because by that time I will have been so invested in the world and immersed in the world and kind of know my way around it. But just because new magic system, new world building, new characters, all of that, definitely wanted to reacquaint myself with this, possibly look for any foreshadowing before the sequel comes out, and I'm really enjoying this. This is an urban fantasy. It's set in Toronto. It has to deal with the fae, fairy courts, the seelie, unseelie courts. We've got all of that dynamic going on, as well as a lot of Greek mythology. And this, I would say, definitely, if you liked the plot of House of Earth and Blood, it's very similar to that. Some creature, some person, something is killing Ironborn fae within the city, and we have 4 unlikely teens band together to try and figure out who done it. So very similar in initial premise to House of Earth and Blood, very, very different in execution, but I think if you liked that, I know a lot of people say if you like City of Bones, I think it is, then you'll like this one, and especially if you've read either of those and you're like, those are great, but I wish it were just 100 times more queer, then definitely this is the series for you. We have 4 main characters. They're all LGBTQIA. Our main characters are pansexual, lesbian, gay, and bisexual, so we've got a lot of representation there, as well as a lot of casual representation throughout the series. So I'm really enjoying this one. I'm primarily listening to it via audiobook, but currently rereading this. And if I didn't mention it before, I am about 60% of the way through that one, so hopefully I am going to wrap that one up this week as well, just because I know I'm going to be so excited to pick up the sequel when it finally comes out. So I am also going to be picking up another book. Sundial, really, while it wasn't my favorite, it's not going to be like in my top 10 books of the year or anything like that, it really got me out of my reading slump. It was very fast, it had short chapters, it had a lot of twists, so I'm going with another one that I feel like is going to be another like very solid read, because the goal now, of course, is to stay out of the reading slump now that I've kind of gotten out of it. So my next book, I picked The Resting Place by Camilla Sten, and it is translated by Alexandra Fleming, and I chose this one because I've read The Lost Village. I read it, I think, last month or the month before that. I'm really bad at, like, I remember all the books that I read in a year, but I don't remember when I've read them. But I read The Lost Village by this author earlier this year, and I did really enjoy it. It was very much like a Midnight Mass meets Blair Witch Project sort of vibes. I read it via audiobook. It was a very chilling experience. So I'm gonna go with The Resting Place because this is another one where it is horror, but I felt like also like The Lost Village. The Lost Village felt like it was more of like a thriller pace than a horror pace, just because, I mean, obviously faster paced horror exists, but normally like I gravitate towards long and slow and gothic and dark and creeping and just like in general slower paced, longer horror fiction. So that one was pretty short. I want to say I listened to it on audio, so I just have to estimate. I think it was about probably like 300 or something pages. This one is about the same, and it does have very short chapters, so it is kind of reading a little bit thriller-y at the moment as opposed to horror. Honestly, it's one of those books where you could categorize it as either or, I feel like, but this one is, we're following our main character. She witnesses her grandmother getting murdered in front of her, and she sees the person who did it. However, she has face blindness, so she has no idea who did it, and she inherits this mysterious estate that she doesn't really know that her grandmother had, or she knows her grandmother had it, but she's never been. There's a lot of family secrets surrounding the estate, but she, her boyfriend, her aunt, and then the estate lawyer all go to this mansion to talk through the estate, divvy everything up. Obviously, I feel like there is going to be a lot at play with potentially figuring out who done it. Maybe there's going to be some more murders in here. I'm not sure. Again, since it is like kind of a thriller, kind of a shorter horror, I want to go in knowing as little as possible. So I don't know what kind of tone this is going to take. I don't know if, you know, maybe they're at this isolated place and they're going to start dropping off one by one. I don't know if it's going to be more like that, or if it's going to be more just our main character trying to figure out who killed her grandmother based on her face blindness. So this is what I plan on picking up next. Another, I feel like, fairly shorter paced read that I can get through within a couple of days. So I really think that's the key for me right now. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have in terms of my makeup Spring Fling-A-Ween-a-thon. It's gonna be the weekend soon, so I'll probably do like the baking challenge right around then, just because I have more time. And Sundial did count towards the book that has pink on the cover, so we're good there. But yeah, it's getting late. I am excited to dive into The Resting Place, so I'm going to get more into this one. I've only gotten to about page 20 or so still haven't really gotten a lot into this yet, but I'm excited to read more, and I will talk to you all with an update later. So it is now Sunday, the very end of what has felt like the shortest weekend ever, but I did get a lot of reading done, just not a lot of updating done. So I think depending on how long my vlog is by the end of this clip, I'll kind of keep it going throughout this week as well. So not like a standard weekly long vlog, but like a week and a half vlog probably. So I definitely feel myself climbing out of my reading slump, so that's really good. I did finish The Resting Place by Camilla Sten, and I did enjoy my time reading this one. And actually, now that I'm holding this up and talking about it, the books in this vlog that I've read have actually been the second books that I've read by authors, so that's pretty cool. I do have to say, overall, just based on the books that I read this week, I probably won't pick up anything else by Catriona, but I will be picking up things from Camilla Sten in the future because I just really enjoyed this one. I think in fact, I know I guessed the twist of this one, like a random hunch that I had with some particular detail that I read about 30 to 40% of the way through this one. So honestly, I'm not going into thrillers ever really trying to do that. So the fact that I guessed this, I feel like probably this one would be pretty easy to guess, but also I feel like it was out there. At the same time, like it wasn't a twist that I see a lot, but I guessed it just based on some throwaway clues. So if you pay attention and you're really reading this one and focusing, you'll probably be able to guess the twist pretty early on. However, the twist is very bizarre and there's like a lot of working pieces within the twist to make it a twist. So I feel like even if you guess this one early on, there's enough pieces where you're wanting to figure out exactly how the twist could happen. So I really enjoyed it. I think the writing is very engaging, as well as I feel like Camilla Sten does a really good job of avoiding missteps that often happen within the thriller genre, especially when it comes to women protagonists who are mentally ill or are unreliable protagonists in any sense of the word. I feel like both with The Lost Village and now The Resting Place, I definitely feel like some very sensitive topics, when they're touched upon, they're done very well. They're handled very well. They're never tokenized or like the conditions aren't taken advantage of. So in The Lost Village, our main character and some other side characters all had different mental illnesses, but it wasn't like that was making them quote unquote unreliable narrators, or it wasn't like a crazy person narrative. It just like built into the story. It was just aspects of characters that I felt played really well. I thought it was handled really well, which unfortunately in 2022, a lot of thrillers still get really horribly wrong, especially when it comes to mental health. Now this one, our main character has facial blindness, and so she sees her grandmother at the beginning of this one get murdered. She doesn't know who did it because of her facial blindness. However, this is not something that is like defining of her almost. It's just another part of her and her personality. It's never like depicted as like a weakness or anything else, or like a fun quirk or anything. It's just depicted as another part of her, and it's very interesting actually getting to see the way our main character, how she categorizes people and actually remembers people. She's not a helpless character, and she definitely is not like portrayed as a helpless character because of her impediment, which I feel like when I have seen this done in media before, I feel like it's very easy, unfortunately, to infantilize people who don't see the world the way that we do. But I thought that was very interesting. So her prosopagnosia, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure, that is a contributing factor to like the start of this story and the events that happen at the start of the story. But throughout the story, it's not like our main character has no idea who anyone is, and is like portrayed to be like an unreliable narrator in that way. It's just an extra element of mystery, kind of her trying to figure out, as the police say, if this was just a random burglary gone wrong, which obviously she wouldn't be able to recognize the person, or if it was a person who knew that she wouldn't be able to recognize them, so they would disguise themselves. So yeah, I don't know if any of that actually kind of made sense. I know I went on a little bit of a tangent, but regardless, this author, I feel like she handles things very well, sensitive topics very well, especially when it comes to mental health and other very sensitive topics. I know thrillers as a genre, horror as a genre can be very dark. Dark things are discussed, sometimes not very carefully and sometimes more carefully and well thought out. So I definitely highly recommend both The Lost Village and The Resting Place. I want to say I feel like I enjoyed the entirety of The Lost Village better, but I felt like The Resting Place, I feel like this author has gotten better at her craft and will continue to get better at her craft with each book. So yes, I really enjoyed this one. Definitely an author for me to keep watching as she comes out with new thrillers and horror. And then next up for reading updates, I got some book mail this weekend, which I actually was not expecting. So I got the sequel to A Dark and Hollow Star yesterday, A Cruel and Fated Light. It's very huge, very chunky fantasy. I'm very excited to read this one. However, this does not come out until May 24th. My pre-order got here very pleasantly early, so it got here on the 14th. This doesn't come out until the 25th, which honestly I'm kind of happy about. Definitely a happy surprise. The past couple pre-orders that I've done through Barnes & Noble have just not been great at getting their way to me. I obviously pre-order certain books to support certain authors, and also just because like I'm really excited about books, so I want to get them as soon as possible. The last couple of pre-orders that I've gotten have each taken about a week after the book actually came out to get their way to me, which kind of defeats the purpose of a pre-order. So I was really pleasantly surprised when this came, very excited to get it. However, I have not finished my reread of the first book yet. So I'm about 70% of the way through this one. I think after I finish updating this clip, I am going to sit down and really try and power through this one, finish it so I can dive into the sequel, because now that I have my hands on it, I'm very excited to get to it. I did think that I had a little bit more time to finish book one, so I'm definitely very excited to finish my reread of this, keep reading this, having a lot of fun. Definitely, I don't want to check page counts because I don't want to get spoiled, but this is book one, this is book two, so we're stepping up in page count. I'm very excited to get to it, and I also pre-ordered the audiobook. The audiobook for the first book is full-ish cast. This one is as well, and I've really been enjoying reading the audiobook along with the physical book. So I haven't decided, depends on when I finish the first book, of course, but I would like to read this ideally with the audiobook. Obviously it hasn't come out yet, so I'm unsure. I'm very excited to pick this up. I can't wait. So it'll really just be how I'm feeling and when I finish the first book, but that was some very exciting book mail that I was not anticipating this week. That book mail also means that once I finish this, I am going to have to find room on this shelf, reorganize it a little bit, probably take off my His Dark Materials bind up, which is front facing, so that I can make room on the shelf. It should go right here. This is where the first one is. You can just barely see it in frame. So yes, I'll need to make some room for this second book, but I'm very excited to have it in my hands. This was one that was, I believe, supposed to come out last year, and just got delayed until this year. So it's been a long time coming. Very excited to have it in my hands now. But that is going to be it for this update. So I'm gonna go get reading, relax, enjoy the last couple hours of my weekend, and I will talk to you all later. Hello friends, happy Monday. I did manage to finish my reread of A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth today. I had a lot of, not downtime at work, but I did have a lot of time at work to listen to audiobooks just because I was the only person in my department working at my office today. So I got to put my headphones in as I was working, finish reading this. And I do think after just having finished this and kind of sitting on it and thinking about what I wanted to read next, what I want to do next, I do think I'm going to wait until the audiobook comes out for this one, because I just had such a fun time. The audiobook narrators for this one are really good. I am very, very bad at audiobook narrator names. I will definitely try and leave that information down below if I can remember. I know Natalie Naudis is one of the audiobook narrators in this one, as well as I want to say Neo Sichi, who I believe, I would have to double check, but I believe they also did The First Sister. I think they were one of the voices in The First Sister, those audiobooks, which I really love that series as well. I feel like definitely once you get invested in certain audiobook genres, you can kind of hear the same voices pop up again and again, which is nice. So yes, I think I'm going to wait for the second book, even though I really want to pick it up, until the audiobook comes out so I can listen along while I'm reading it, because I love the audiobook experience for these books. So that's what I'm gonna do, even though it is calling my name. I don't have that long to wait. I think I'm only going to try and read one more book during this vlog, just because I probably should like wrap it up soon. Even though I didn't really get enough footage to have just a week-long vlog, probably should just wrap it up anyway at some point. But I did remember at the beginning of this video, I said I wanted to kind of do an impromptu sort of Spring Fling-A-Ween, even though I really missed the weekend that it was. And obviously I've been reading these books throughout these past past couple days, definitely longer than the original Spring Fling-A-Ween-a-thon, but I want to kind of finish up the prompts. I did read the one with the pink on the cover, that was Sundial by Catriona, and for the backlist title, I think I'm going to pick up The Family Plot by Cherie. I think this one I should be able to find the audiobook on Libby, I'm hoping. I have the physical copy from my library. That's been something that I've really been enjoying. I'd say about 90% of my books, I love getting both the Libby version and the physical version at the same time, because that way not only do I have the opportunity to keep reading while I am driving to work, or if I don't have like space or time to bring a physical book with me, I also just really like the immersive experience, especially as I'm getting out of reading slump, or if I'm kind of tired and I want to read but I don't know if I'll be able to focus on reading. I really like reading physically as well as listening to it via audio. I know that's not something that like everyone can do, and it's not something I do all the time, but just recently I've really been enjoying having both on hand. And it really does not cost anything, obviously, since I am getting both versions through my library, so hopefully I can find the audiobook for this one so I can go back and forth. But I am looking forward to this one. I've heard great things about this author. This for me is backlist. It's still relatively new. I mean, it didn't come out in the 80s or the 90s, like anything like that. It did come out in 2016, so I feel like now that we're in the 2020s, we've had a couple of years in the 2020s, anything from like the 2010s is backlist. I feel like that's fine, even though definitely not the oldest horror book I could have gone with for sure. I'm very excited, looking forward to reading this one tomorrow. I think should be another day at work where if I can find the audiobook to this one, I should be able to listen to a lot of the audiobook at work, as well as this is 365 pages. So it is a little bit bigger than a lot of the books that I've managed to read this week, other than A Dark and Hollow Star. That one I think is about 400 to 500 pages. I'd have to double check, but I definitely started that one before this vlog. So this is probably the biggest out of Sundial, The Resting Place, and then this book. So looking forward to this one. I've heard really good things. I am going to get to reading, and I will talk to you all later. Alrighty, so I am here ready to wrap up the vlog, and I did finish The Family Plot by Cherie, and I didn't update at all pretty much during this one just because I didn't really have a lot to say during it. I did enjoy my time reading this one. This is about a family-run business of like construction or like a salvage crew where they go to old houses or old places and they purchase rights to kind of strip it clean of everything that they could then later resell, whether that be antique furniture, like fireplaces, clothes, anything left behind. So we're following this family crew as they make one last desperate bid for this house because their company is going under. They need one miraculous find so that they can resell and get their family business back on track. So this crew shows up at this house. They plan on camping like in the house, staying in the house the week that they are taking everything down, salvaging everything, and creepy things start to happen. They start to realize they might not be alone in the house and there might be supernatural things going on. So this is a very standard haunted house sort of story. If you read a lot of haunted house books or watch a lot of haunted house movies, you'll kind of recognize a lot of the beats in here, especially with like the escalations and the way things slowly start to happen and then keep happening to individual characters. I really like a good haunted house horror, so I was entertained during this one. I didn't really feel like this was anything that I hadn't seen before. It did have tropes, but it was like a familiar trope. It wasn't like annoyingly tropey. It was just comforting tropes that if you like haunted house horror, you're going to enjoy this one. I feel like it's definitely plot driven over character driven. At least I didn't really get a sense for most of the other characters other than our main character that we're following. They're kind of all caricatures, and I do tend to like character driven stories. So there's not a lot of character development, you know, kind of basic motivations for each one, but especially in the beginning, it's easy to get them confused. There are 4 main characters that go to this haunted house, so it's kind of hard at the beginning. There's 1 woman and 3 men, and the 3 men all have very similar names as well. Like there's a Brad and a Bobby. It was hard to keep track of them at first, and they're just not very fleshed out, but I did have a really good time reading this. There were definitely some scares, some thrills in here. I quite enjoyed the idea of it's not just like a family moving into a haunted house, but a salvage crew. I felt like that lended a bit of a different spin to it, and overall I did think this was very enjoyable. I would check out more by the author, just kind of middle of the road for me. It didn't do anything that I didn't like, and it didn't do anything like that exceptional either. Like I feel like if I were to not track this in Goodreads, I feel like I could rediscover this book a couple of years like down the road and maybe not be sure if I had read it or not, but I did enjoy it. It was a very solidly well-paced haunted house story, and with the conclusion of that book, that is going to be it for this vlog. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel for more content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!